We are here today on this beloved community check-in in our social justice series, holding ports accountable. Um, and so we are going to have a special guest on, Terrance Bankston from Friends of the Earth. He is the senior ports and freight campaigner in the Mid-Atlantic, Northeast, and Southeast regions. But before that, of course, we have a couple of announcements to make. And so um, I'm going to start with that. So thank you. So, of course, right now we are on the move with our campaign, protect Newark's future, with the Ports for People ordinance, to end polluting investments, halt fossil fuel expansion, and improve public health and boost green jobs. We are excited to have launched that campaign along with South Ward Environmental Alliance and Pacific Environment. And we are going to be canvassing throughout New Jersey. Well, eventually we're going to be canvassing throughout New Jersey on this. Yet we are focusing on Newark right now in their portside communities. And next, I'm going to have our junior organizer, Christian Beverett, to join the screen, and we would love to hear from him and what he has going on. So Christian, if you could please let me know where you are checking in from. Yep, I think you've got to unmute.
Hi, everybody. My name is Christian Beverett. I am the junior organizer with Parents Engaging Parents, and I'm checking in from Newark, New Jersey.
All right, thank you, Christian. And if you could just let us know what we have going on here.
Yes. So right now, we are in partnership with Pacific Environment, and we are doing an engagement called Ports for the People. And right now, we're looking for environmental justice ambassadors to help us in assistance in going around different parts of Newark and getting community members to sign our petition for clean air. And so, if anybody is interested, please scan the QR code on the flyer that is presented on the screen. We're looking for anybody who can come out and help us canvass and get people to sign the petition. And our next, this is actually going to be our second session for new recruits, which is an informational session, just to get, it's a training for new recruits. So you can kind of get an idea of what we're doing and how we're going to do it. And so that will be tomorrow, Thursday, April 10th at 6 p.m. On the Zoom meeting. And so thank you, everybody. And I hope to see you out there with us getting these petitions signed.
Thank you. And I know that you've been boots on the ground, especially around campus. So if you could share with me what has been your experience when you're sharing the information about the Newark ordinance.
Yes, so I'm a current student at Rutgers University, Newark. And so what I've been doing here when I am not together with the team going around different parts of the South and of the South Ward, I've been going around my campus and talking to my fellow classmates and college students and pretty much going around just telling them that we are not breathing in the best air in Newark, and that is caused by um, the infrastructure that has continued to getting built, and the ports that are letting out unhealthy air for us to breathe. And so
Mhm.
I've been going around telling my fellow colleagues that, and um, it it's been a good process so far. Um, I've had a good amount of people that I've been able to connect and get to sign the petition, and
Mhm.
so it's been a good experience so far.
That's that's really promising to hear how our youth want to definitely be involved in advocating for the air that they're breathing. Especially, I know a lot of times we're always so busy going along with our everyday movement, and sometimes we don't even really think about it. And so, this is definitely an opportunity for us to learn what is really happening in our communities and to really advocate for cleaner air. And so, thank you, for Christian, for that. We appreciate you and the work that you've been doing. And again, we do have our second informational session, which will be tomorrow on Thursday, April 24th at 6 p.m. It's going to be a Zoom meeting. So if you did go ahead and scan that QR code at the bottom of your page, it'll be greatly appreciated. And you can find out more, even if you decide that you're not going to be an ambassador. It's a great opportunity for you to hear about why we're doing this work. This is definitely going to be, we're definitely going to be sharing that information as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so our next announcement is for the second annual baby shower that's in partnership with Orange Department of Health and a host of other partners there. We will be there giving out resources of information, definitely on this ordinance as well. Um, there's going to be baby shower paraphernalia, baby clothes, probably baby shoes. I know that we have lots of resources for toddlers as well. Slippers, you name it, it's going to be there. All the items are brand new, so we do not give away any old items at this event. And so we're definitely excited to be a part of this event here, there in Orange, along with Mayor Dwayne Warren and the Department of Health. Okay. Our next upcoming Summer Kids Camp PEP is going to is in partnership with Inspire Sports Camp. We are sending multiple buses out in terms 3 and terms 4. There are 2 different sessions. It is only $50. It's going to be a fun-filled week for your children ages 10 through 16. They take a great trip out to Lebanon, PA. They get to experience some fresh, clean air. That's what we want them to have. And so this is a great opportunity for them to go and spend the week, learn some things, learn some team building, be active, and have a really great time. And so we definitely want for you guys to take advantage of this opportunity. It is only $50. It's a whole week overnight camp. It's going to be for 5 nights, 6 days. And so definitely send your kiddos out, sign up. We'll have an informational session and we'll be in touch with you all. Yes, definitely register today. Seats are limited for sure. Okay, so next on our agenda, we will bring to the stage Mr. Terrance Bankston. Thanks for joining us, Terrance. Once again, we're going to be chit-chatting about what's going on with these ports, and definitely just to get an understanding of all the work that we're doing in partnership with Friends of the Earth, with our senior ports campaigner. Okay, looks like I think everybody's having a muted kind of day. So you're going to have to unmute yourself, Terrance. I'm sorry.
I should be used to it now. Good evening, everyone. How are you? It is definitely a pleasure to engage in part two of this social justice series that I participated in. Last week, we had the opportunity to sort of talk about what the Friends of the Earth priorities was. And so we appreciated parents engaging parents, giving us the opportunity to utilize their platform and communicate not just to their statewide network that's in New Jersey, but to their national network of parent advocates, which includes politicians, elected officials. It also includes your average neighbor, right? The guy or the gal next door. And so we appreciate this unique union and opportunity. And so good evening to everyone. Big shout out to my hometown, Newark, New Jersey. I am actually, and you hear the sirens a little bit, chiming in from downtown Houston, Houston, Texas. And this week, hold on one second, guys. On live television, you'll never be able to do that, but in podcasts, you can. So I wanted to shut the door. But I'm checking in from downtown Houston. And as I was saying before, big shout out to Newark, New Jersey, which is my hometown. I see Miss Elise on there. Big shout out to East Orange, New Jersey, and all of the great work that she leads. She leads there. Moving along, so we're going to talk today about accountability and holding ports accountable, and what that looks like, and what does that mean for parent advocates, for decision makers that impact ports, and for decision makers who do impact ports but don't know that they do, right? Like mayors and council people and school board members. In New Jersey, you have freeholders, right? Or county commissioners, they call them. Whatever your elected representation is, they are a voice for you on the issues that are most important to you, right? And so when we tell people to vote their circumstance, what are we really saying? We're saying don't vote for names, right? Don't just engage with the leadership who invite you to their parties or cookouts, but challenge those folks to lead based on not just being a good example for the community, but based on what the issues of the community are, right? And so we want air quality and clean air, clean air and clean water to become a part of the quality of life conversation in every circle. So when we're in churches or faith-based institutions, I should say, when we're at work, when we're in our neighborhoods, just fellowship, and when we're out shopping, when we're at barbershops, hair salons, and we're getting to these conversations, when we're posting things on social media that we think is funny, entertaining, or just a serious matter to share, we should always keep social justice in mind, because we cannot legislate morality, which is the reason why we have environmental justice. I have this lapel pin on, which is very large, and you're not mistakenly seeing that it is a mirror there. What it says at the top of this mirror is world. What it says at the bottom is changer. So when folks look at me and they go to look at my lapel pin and they compliment it, they're looking at themselves and saying, wait a minute, I can be a world changer. So when you help to sustain what we have accomplished as a people over decades in terms of social justice, and when you help to sustain that and advance it, right? Because once it's done, we again can't legislate morality. So we must continue, people must continue to ensure that the civil rights and the things that we have fought for to advance this country stay in place. But because we can't legislate morality is why we needed environmental justice, and something that has been around for a few decades itself is not all too familiar with the people, even those impacted the most. And so a group of us got together, and we are grateful that Parents Engaging Parents decided to support this initiative in a major way, because this is the first time for New Jersey, and it's also a first time for other states who we are partnering with in this national launch of a series of report cards. Initially, there will be 4 covering California, Texas, and in Texas, it's the Port of Houston, which we're also partnered with in terms of Friends of the Earth. Then we have Louisiana, and we're focused on the Port of NOLA there. Then we have our port, the 3rd busiest port in the country, the Port of New York and New Jersey, and we are focused on the Newark port. But much of what we're going to discuss, or will be discussing or assessing, is important or impactful to even the small port down in Camden, New Jersey. What are we saying? We're saying that wherever New York, New Jersey port goes, so will the rest of the East Coast. And so when we talk about how far behind we are in terms of community engagement and knowledge around air quality and what can be done and how ports can help by just being a better neighbor, right? The same way we hold our neighbors accountable to cut their grass, to sweep in front of their houses. Well, the port is our neighbor too. And we quite haven't looked at it that way, because historically ports were used for slave trade, right? Which links to the coincidence, to it not being a coincidence in terms of why most of people who reside near ports are people of color, right? And then are the most impacted. And so when I first applied for my position, which was created for a senior ports or ports advisory campaigner, what really stood out to me as I researched Friends of the Earth was this report card project that was produced by them, actually my director now, Marcy, on cruise ships, right? And many of us go on these cruise ships. I personally have never been on one, but I know my family would go year after year, and I have friends that have done cruises. And so we never thought about, right? Well, how do these cruises impact us outside of entertaining us, right? Or entertaining our families members and being this great escape getaway? Well, there's a lot of regulations that's in place, similar to what we deal with on land, that says, well, you're not allowed, for example, to pollute, whether it's sound pollution, whether it's air pollution, in certain waters, right? And those waters are typically connected to suburban neighborhoods. We expect waters that are regulated by the military, right, to not have to not be polluted, because the average ship is not able to access that. But when you intentionally circumvent pollution, the same way you do with trucks in our community, and airplanes in our community, when you intentionally say, well, the pollution will not be allowed here, but it is allowed here in these zip codes, in these area codes, that is racism, right? And that is where environmental justice concept kind of steps in and says, well, it's not about color. It's about 17 principles. And when you put your principles over your personality, the question then is, what do you stand for? And so I challenge folks to Google and look up the 17 principles of environmental justice, as I pretty much do every session. And I challenge you to by saying, you do not have to be an environmental justice expert or advocate. You do not have to be an environmental justice organization to adopt or to identify, right, with an environmental justice principle. But once you do, your mind frame and then your life will change forever. And when you, again, sustain social justice and help to advance it, as well as advance environmental justice, particularly for port communities, you are not just changing your community, you're changing the world. And so with that being said, I want to focus this conversation a little bit about the report card project that we're working on, which will not focus on cruise ships, but it's going to focus on port operations. And what the report card is designed to do is, yes, hold ports accountable, but it's also to hold people accountable, because we are responsible for advocating ourselves. We are the experts to say what's acceptable for us and not in our community. And what elected officials and decision makers challenge us to do is to be about that people power. And some of us may say, well, we go to the polls. We shouldn't have to keep coming out to meetings and town halls to tell you to do the right thing. Well, we do. Humans, people in positions, or whether they're elected or appointed, are human beings too, right? They have a starting place and an ending place, and so the idea that we have to meet people where they at are important. And what we need is people power, the community who are the most impacted people, meeting these folks where they are, so that they can begin to make better decisions on our behalf, and more importantly, they can join us on the right side of history. With that being said, I want to go into a little bit more about the report card. Next slide, please. And so today's agenda will go through a few things. One, a brief introduction of the, it says Houston, pardon me for that. It would be New York and New Jersey report card team. And then a scope of the report card project, categories that will be assessed not by the Port of Houston, but by the Port of New York, New York and New Jersey, and also what those grading scales are. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the project timeline, what we've been working on, where we are, and where we're headed to. We'll also be able to share this presentation because I don't have anything confidential in it, and we'll make sure that the updates are there. And obviously, I'll be back, or I can also, there will be a series of other meetings in this regard where we'll talk about the report card project as well. I want to talk about how the report card links to a national launch that we really want you to be a part of, right? And then talk about, well, how can you get engaged? How can your organization get engaged in a local campaign around this report card? Right. We don't just put out information and let it sit there. We want to take this information on the road. So when they were talking about earlier doing a campus operation, it's great that we have those things, because folks say politicians just come knock on their door during election season. Well, obviously PEP is not doing that. They're knocking on their door, spreading good information. And it's not about vote for me. It's not about them. It's really about you. And so again, when they have this type of mechanism and community engagement aspect or component in place, when the report card is published, here is a way to get this information in the hands of people in an organic way, but also from a familiar face, because usually those canvases would have been in that community before. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you can get involved in both the national launch of the report card series. Remember, there were before, and then how you can get involved in your individual state. In this case, I'm expecting most of the folks on the call to be from New Jersey. Then we'll go over to the current status of the project again, where we are and what the next steps are, and then I'll be able to take any questions and comments. Erica, is that okay?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, we can go to the next slide then. So the report card includes 4 categories in terms of the metrics of scoring, and every category includes what we consider to be a relevant metrics and points to be assigned to each of those metrics. Relevant. What is meant by that? So it's not something that's not applicable to, 1, advancing environmental justice, 2, attaining zero emissions, particularly in near port communities, and then also around the community engagement piece, keeping the community involved and engaged. And you'll see that the points there are significant. It's the second largest category. Again, changing the scope or the lens in terms of how we look at ports and how ports look at us. We want them to look at us as neighbors and not simply as an outside community who only has to answer to us if there's a regulation on the book that says so. And so these 4 categories are relevant to, again, zero emission attainment, which is linked to providing, it's not just providing a better air quality, is really just changing our total culture of our air quality, particularly in these communities when we talk about zero emission attainment. Category 2 talks about clear air planning. What is your port's intention around this, right? How are they investing, particularly governmental dollars? Again, why you should be invested in this, because it's not just the private dollars that come through there that they utilize for these projects. It is actual federal dollars. And in this case, we are expecting the Port of New Jersey under the Clean Ports program to receive, I believe, the second highest award under that program, awarded to approximately, I believe it was 53 ports. And this was under the Biden administration, which is also important why we're doing this report card, because we also want folks to know what ports are getting right, what funding they're using, so that you can advocate to the federal government, regardless of who your president is, regardless of who your senator or congressperson is. You can just tell them it's not about your party, it's about your people, right? And we want to be consistent in that. And so category 3, emission reduction actions, right? The highest. What actions are you taking in real time, right? And how fast are you doing it? We want it done right, but we also want it done expeditiously, in the same breath. And then we have category 4, my favorite category, community engagement and collaboration. And this really aligned too with the energy of the Biden administration, and we can all disagree with different policies, but one of the things that the Biden administration got right was Justice 40, which I also encourage you to look up. Justice 40 was an executive order that was signed that actually helped people and actually advanced us perhaps 40 years versus taking us back 40 years. And it said that 40% of resources that federal departments put out to communities must go to what's considered overburdened communities, i.e. Portside communities, i.e. Environmental justice communities, Newark, Camden, Paterson, Trenton, East Orange, New Jersey, Jersey City, New Jersey, and I'm leaving many, many, many more out. But in those grants that were coming out, and in that Justice 40, it was really saying, listen, the federal government, for the first time in the history of this country, is going to prioritize those overburdened communities, and for the right reasons: clean air and clean water. And then the EPA also stepped up in the Department of Transportation and said, well, you know what? The Department of Transportation said, which leads to our trucking issue, right? And rail, and how and the role they play in terms of the port operation, but also the role they play with polluting our community with no regard for how it impacts particularly women of color, mortality rates, and health issues like asthma and autism. And we wonder why it's increased. And part of that wondering why is because when we don't see something or feel it in real time, we don't make a connection to it. And so hopefully this report card will allow us to make yet another connection to it, in addition to the resources that we have shared with you in the different chats around the social media platforms. And so I was saying the EPA had also doubled down by really weighing heavily the community engagement of our ports. Meaning if you were not engaged in the community, or if you didn't start within the past year, right? So you didn't have to be doing it for 10 years. If you just got started, but if you did it in a genuine and an organic way, well, then that was going to benefit you on the funding side. And in this case, when we worked with the New Jersey and the New York, New Jersey Port Authority and a few others, when I say we, it was Friends of the Earth, it was Parents Engaging Parents, it was the Southwood Environmental Alliance, who was mentioned earlier, it was many, many others, to ensure that the ports in these in the states that we mentioned earlier, Louisiana, Texas, New York, and New Jersey, were prioritizing the community and was seizing the moment in history to join us again on the right side of history by not only just applying for funds to do projects that they may have been wanting to do, but projects that would be have an environmental justice consideration in there, which means that they would consider green projects and not projects that would be harmful to us. Next slide. Just quickly about the grading scales. And so it's two main scales we're using. One of them is for the combined categories that we listed the four. And it will kind of give these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ratings at the top of where the port would fall. We want all ports to fall within the clean port champion. We want none of the ports to fall on the furthest end, which is the dirtiest dock. And so it's not about so much where the port will land, is more about what are they going to do about where they land and how do they plan to engage the community in it. We don't expect any of the ports to be clean port champions. We hope that some will be a rising star, but they're going to need the community to get there. They're going to need to stay connected to organizations like Friends of the Earth and Pacific Environment and Ocean Conservancy and a bunch of others who really do great at connecting the dots between the community, the federal government, and also federal stakeholders who are advocates around the environmental justice work, or just around port and zero emission work. The individual grading scales again are broken down at the bottom with the 4 different categories, and gold standard, and it goes down to long way to go in terms of ranking them under each particular category. And again, that collectively will produce an overall score at the top. And the idea is that this will be a motivational tool to work with the port and the community over the next 2 years to increase their ranking, right? And hopefully within a few cycles of doing this report card every 2 years, and then alternating 2 years in different states that we haven't gotten to yet, that we will see and be a part of, again, helping the port to become clean port champions and to meet a gold standard. Next slide, please. And so the timeline for the New York, New Jersey report card team is pretty much listed here. We started in April, but there were several months of just kind of like trying to figure it out. Who could we work with in the different states? Which organizations were willing and had the capacity to take on this type of project? Because we could not do it without the community being at the forefront. And I do see the questions in the chat at the forefront. And so we spent some time with engaging with FO, engaging with other stakeholders around port advocacy. We definitely worked with PEP and their different connections to the Southport Environmental Alliance's Port Advisory Council and other their EJ Council that they have and meet with. And folks were able to give input based on their experience and their research of where the ports were within these particular criteria that fell under those 4 different categories. And so we spent time figuring out what the categories would be and how it was best or most fair way to rank, right, to assess and then rank these ports. And so we started out then in April doing the research and engaging community folks in a conversation for several weeks around these different around the scoring and the assessment process. We are now in the verification of research and justification of scores process. So we want to give the ports an opportunity to have a heads up before the scores are published. We want them to be able to say, oh, wait a minute, we actually are doing better at that. That information is just over here, or that information is not available yet, but here it is to show, and then we'll give them time that we can make an adjustment before it's before the final document is produced. And then it says discuss and explore outline of local campaign efforts to amplify report cards. So that's where, again, you all can come in by being a part of the national launch that will occur, where you will get a preview of all 4 report cards. And then you will also get to experience the launch of the landing page, which answers one of the questions in the chat. And that is, how can we find the report card? Well, we, thanks to FAST, which is a funders network that we've been working with for a while on zero emission campaigns. They fundraise money for this initiative to support some communication expenses. And one of those expenses is the report card will have its own landing page, and Parents Engaging Parents, myself, we will weigh in on what the URL will be. And also they will obviously be available on the different pages of the lead organizations, as well as Friends of the Earth. So you can expect to see it online as well as in your emails, and hopefully over the summer at some point at your door. In terms of late April, May, port engagement overview and reflections, we are again kind of in that bucket too, where we have reached out to the port and we will be meeting with them to discuss their preliminary scores and also some next steps of how they can engage. We are preparing for the soft launch of the report card as well as the national launch, as I mentioned. And then we're going to finalize campaign efforts to amplify the report card locally. So we also are looking for ideas and invitations, right, to come into your community meetings or organizational meetings, your faith-based institutions, to talk about the health impacts that our port and poor air quality has on our communities that we live, shop, and fellowship in. And then in June, we hope to release the actual report card again during the national launch, and then go into local campaign and engagement efforts in each of the 3 states. And so, yes, you will see me alongside PP supporting them in those efforts this summer and throughout the fall. Next slide. And so to give you a sneak peek, I don't know, Erica, if you can click on the link that says the line that says New Jersey. If so, it'll open up the port report card and the port's report card, and I'll be able to just give them an idea of what the template looked like and maybe some examples of some of the categories. And then if not, we can do that at another time. I think we have, actually we do. I know I saw Tyler on, but I can put it in the chat after during the question and answer segment. We actually have some screenshots of the report card that we were able to convert to a photo and utilize for you to be able to see at least what the template looks like. That's not what the actual printed or designed document is going to look like, but you can see the working document that we have, that we used, and comments about how we the rationale, the methodology around the scoring, and also some of the scores. And again, I would like you to see some of the subcategories that we have kind of scored in. We can go to the next slide if the supplement comes to work. And so pretty much your project lead, how can you connect if you reside in New Jersey or New York to this report card project and stay connected? Again, these report cards will go out every 2 years, and we hope in 2026 we will start in a different port community on the East Coast. We look to go into the Port of Savannah, the Port of Wilmington. And so while we're doing that, the idea is that you would spend the off year in New Jersey 2026 working with the port to support them in those categories, and they will be doing the same to support the community in terms of advancing in those categories and keeping the community involved. And so Erica is your point of contact. Parents Engaging Parents in general is the lead organization for the report card team in New Jersey. The Southwood Environmental Alliance's Port Advisory Council is also a part of this work. And so you can email Erica if you have questions about the national aspect of the campaign, or if Erica is just too busy running up and down the state doing great work and you have a question about the New Jersey campaign, I can also answer that. As well as our port and community engagement assistant, Tyler Johnson, who's also a native of North New Jersey. With that being said, I can take any questions or feedback.
Well, definitely. Thank you, Terrance, for doing the overview of the report card. And I could say it was really fulfilling to be able to kind of delve into the work that happens at the port, and then even just to partner with other organizations to find out really what's going on. I know that there's been federal funding that's been allotted for this work to happen. And so, as a community, we really do need to be abreast as to what or how far along ports are in the work that they're doing to move from emissions to from fossil fuel to zero emissions.
And so, well, Erica, I was going to say that I mentioned that to actually John earlier. John is our deputy director here at Friends of the Earth for our Oceans and Vessels program, and I was just sharing how he asked me in general, how were the organizations responding to the process, to the information. I said, well, every organization is different, is taking a different approach, but I use you as an example of someone who is representing an organization that ports work is not what you necessarily did. Environmental justice organization is what you're not. Yet you took an interest in the issue because it connected to the mission and the goals of Parents Engaging Parents. And then you understood that, wait a minute, environmental justice does fit into our pillars as we talk about education and we talk about mental health, your other 2 pillars. And we know that it's all about that. And so I said, well, one day they're learning. And I said, even with Erica, who really, I believe, has treated it more like an independent research project, whereas other groups may have had consultants because they do port work already, right? And so while this report card took them a little more intricate or in more direct engagement with the port versus sort of like coalition-based work, you really didn't have that piece there. And so and kind of what we want to do with this is empower the local leaders to be able to do this work, to be able to represent themselves, but we want them to feel safe doing it, right? And safe means they don't have to be an expert. They don't, in terms of the science, the scientific nature of it or the legal aspect of it. But if they know they have a partner that will have their back legally, when we talk about legal advocacy in the environmental space, that is something that has been missing in terms of resources. That I think local groups have been asking for. And even in when we are doing funding opportunities, the federal government don't just fund environmental justice groups for this work. In fact, they have challenged us over the past few years to engage more organizations into this work. But let's be clear about that. And I always say that the environmental justice groups not only must always be at the table, but they should help lead the conversations for those groups and organizations that are just new to the space, because there's while there's nuances, there is a deep, rich history in terms of how we got here and where we need to go. If you all can see the screen, I was able to kind of sneak in the report card a little bit, so I can give you a kind of a bit of an idea of the process we went through, because I think I saw a question about sort of the process. Tab here kind of just gave us instructions, right, on how to get this done. And the great thing about this process is everyone played a role in it that wanted to, including the local groups. And so this project, while it was a national one, it allowed local groups to not only be the lead within their state, but to also engage at every single possible level of this project to any degree that they wanted to. And so when we look at these instructions and directions and the methodology and even the thought process around why did we choose the Port of New York, New Jersey, Port of New Orleans, Port of Houston Authority, Port of San Diego as the first four, those things were well thought out, but also included people, again, and they're all listed here in this bottom blue box, who are really pillars of their state. I would like to say flagship organizations, those who are the statewide and or the local groups, or the groups local to the state, I should say, really helped to champion this project. And again, we wouldn't have been able to get it done without them being involved at every level, or at least it would not have been quite the same. And so just an example, one or two examples under each category. And so in category one, you'll see emission inventory. And so the question was, or the statement was made, an emissions inventory is a quantification of selected pollutants. So it's also telling us what it is. So if you didn't know anything about ports, this is something that would go over well, or translate well, I like to say, from the block to the boardroom. Emissions inventory. An emissions inventory is a quantification of selected pollutants that are emitted within a designated area by mobile sources over a given time period. And so this is a lot of the equipment that moves around the ports and move and cranes and different tugboats and things of that nature. And so then it gives an evaluation, a methodology. What should we be looking at? Well, the maximum points were 2. This port has an emissions inventory. So what are we saying? Just for you to have an emissions inventory is a big thing. So what does that suggest to you as an advocate? It should suggest to you as an advocate that there are too many ports who do not have an emissions inventory that's made public. If you don't have an emissions inventory, and you're not communicating about that to the public that you're impacting, how can we know? Because you can't electrify everything overnight. It's expensive and it takes time. So if you can't prioritize it, if you don't know which equipment is giving off the most emissions, how can you raise funds accordingly, allocate funds accordingly and advocate accordingly. You cannot. And so just having an emissions inventory is a big deal. You'll see our port is slated to get 2. New Jersey, fortunately, is one of the ports that not only has an emissions inventory that they publish every 2 years, but it is available on their website. And even if we don't like what it says, at least it exists. We want to know what's hurting us, to what degree is hurting us. We deserve to know that, don't we? And we want to ensure that our federal dollars are going towards those things.
That's
Let's go
right.
down
So
to
what we definitely want to know is how much they're moving into the right direction. I mean, we want to highlight that. We want to celebrate those wins, right? Because that win for them is a win for us. And so,
absolutely. Well, category 2, I think this was one of the categories where you kind of wanted to pull back another layer, right, Erica? If I'm not mistaken, it was a category 3.
yeah, I know. I definitely wanted to know. I know when they speak of emissions inventory, they're definitely talking about the different levels of the port. So, meaning whether it's like the vessels or dredging trucks. But
You want to know how
I
many
want to
dredging
know
trucks there's
how many
how
dredging
many
trucks you
tugboats.
have, right?
Yes. How many
Mhm.
ferries, how many tugboats, how many trucks are going in and out, etc. So yeah, those, again, it motivated you to ask more about something that you don't wake up asking about, or at least I didn't grow up asking about that. Again, in school at Maple Avenue School in the South Water, Newark, New Jersey, even at the Magnet School, Arts High School that I graduated from, they was telling us about the ozone layer and spraying a can as if that was destroying us.
Yes.
And come to find out, no, it's the trucks and the airplanes and the trains and all of these things that we are fascinated by in our community, but don't realize how detrimental it is. And again, if it's going to be, it should be split amongst everybody, not just imposed on those who are, again, in the worst conditions, the worst neighborhoods, the least amount of resources, failing schools. I mean, on and on and on.
And
So
we
category
really
2.
need to think about our consumerism as well. Like when we're really thinking about it, those trucks, those vessels are coming in because we keep buying. So I think we need to be a little bit more mindful as to how we're spending. Right.
I mean, that's a great point. I mean, I have a resource that talks about the 100 top shippers or cargo owners. And so you'll be surprised who those stores are, some of your favorite brands, right? And so, but to know that your dollar is connected to your pollution one way or another, you might engage differently. And it doesn't mean you don't support the store anymore, but you might write them an email or a letter. Or you might, protest in a way where you say, well, I'm not supporting this store until, but the more information you know, the more you can make those type of decisions. And so here I want to give an example where we did not.
I see a comment. Miss Elise West asked, does that include 18-wheeler trucks? Yes, it does.
Yes, all trucks.
Yeah.
Anything that's moving freight, right? Around. And so I wanted to use an example here in the category 2 that where we maybe didn't give a max score. And so it talks about the rail target, which is kind of that's line 17. It says ports should set milestones and target dates to reduce rail emissions, supported by implementation plans with meaningful interim goals. So we're telling them what we want, right? And then again, well, what are we ranking them on? They have a strong target. They have no specific target, but some sort of plan, or they have no plan at all. Now, why is this one you'll see this consistent in the national launch presentation. Why is this one a unique talk topic? Because rail, some folks will say, well, the ports will say, we don't control rail. We're just a landlord, right? So that's like a landlord in a residential building telling you, well, we don't control what tenants come and stay. We're just the landlord. If that tenant is doing things that are harmful to your neighbors and harmful to your labor force, which is ultimately harm to our ports or harmful to our ports, then you don't have to do business with them, do you? If a school system has a sports program or a transportation program, that school board doesn't have to authorize contracts with companies that doesn't have electrification plans, right? Doesn't mean that your whole fleet has to be electrified, because maybe you don't have the funds to do that right now. But do you have a plan? Do you have a desire? Because based on that, I may spend my dollars somewhere else, because I don't want your school, but those buses or those transportation things coming into this community, not only just impacting those who go to the school, but those who live in the community. And so I may treat the dollar differently. And so it's the same thing that we're asking the ports to do. Okay, you may not control the rail service directly, but you cannot do business with them. And so, yeah, the cargo owners are going to say, well, we'll send it to another train station. We'll send it to another port. But when you're the biggest port, right, the one of the busiest ports, how many people can possibly leave you, right? And so we can stand up for something, but that is a way that so when we ask the ports, well, what do you need from us? They should say we need people support, because if we understand how we can impact the consumers and the politicians, we can help ports who may want to do better to do better, right? Because they're not being controlled by just a dollar or their salary, a high salary that they may be getting. They can say the people are on my back, right? And then the cargo or carrier owners can say, oh, I'm seeing a decrease in sales from, this particular group or population, or they're standing outside of my office. They're standing in the communities that are impacted, and they're doing press conferences like we did with together against Amazon to stop them from taking over our airport airwaves and further damaging our streets without providing any resources for at least filling potholes, right? But they'll send 20 trucks up and down our street every few hours, making multiple deliveries, sometimes just to the same house. And so they got the Port of New York, New Jersey, as far as we knew and researched, had no plan. And so we gave them right now a zero for that. But again, there's going to be an opportunity when we go meet with the plan. And I want to go over a little bit to column G. Explanation of scores, right? So we even put notes about how did the group of people or the people who engaged in the score, and how did they come about? How did they justify the score? And so we said no reduced emission actions in place since 2016, when 4 new locomotives were put into service. Again, we had to do the research to know that, right? We really had to dig in. And so what we're saying is, how dare you stop the advancement, but then grow the problem? And so you get a 0 for that, as that's where we are. So now the port has the opportunity to come back and say, well, wait a minute. Look at this information and look at this. And they might say, well, this is why we did it. And so then it could, maybe adjust up from there or not. But that'll be part of the process and how the process would work. We don't want the port, again, we want to be a good neighbor. We don't want the port to just be surprised by the grading systems, even though we don't need their permission to grade them, right? We don't want them to just see it published and never had a conversation about it, but yet we're talking about a part of the intent is to work with them. You'll see category 2 is 3 is really it's expensive. And so we talked about the electrification of hovercraft too. And so it said ports should invest in fully electric propulsion engines for certain types of new vessels, such as ferries and tugboats. A lot of the vessels are so old and they were never built. They're expensive too, but never were built with the intention to upgrade them, right? For them to become a piece of machine that would not pollute us at the level that they do. And so they're saying, when you have these new vessels come into place, we hope you don't continue to do the old or the worst practices. We hope that you're implementing better or the best practices in terms of anything new, even port expansion. And so here is another example where our port right now has a 0. Because the port has 1 or 0 electrified hovercrafts, and it being the 3rd busiest port, the community finds that unacceptable, and it just so happened that Friends of the Earth does too. I'll go down to the last category and then I'll go back to questions. I'm glad I got an opportunity to show the report card. So we talked about workforce development here under community engagement. That's important because workforce development and trucking are typically the top two issues that when you speak to community members who live near ports. When you ask them specific questions about the conditions of their environment without them knowing or making a connection to the port, it goes back to workforce development and goes back to trucking. And there is a significant connection to workforce development and gentrification and how ports being the economic engine that they can and being a neighbor and getting federal funding, how they could help us. And then the government also provides incentives for these type of programs. And make no mistake, we don't want just green jobs. You need access to training for jobs, but we want green careers as well, right? We don't just want to pick up the trash. We want to do that too if that's the job that's there and we are qualified for that. But we also want to be directors. We also want to be commissioners. We also want to be executive secretaries, directors of stability, directors of community engagement for port operations. And so, yes, ports have all of these different positions. Did you know about it? And then how are you connected to it? And how is your work connected to it? And so we talked about the port needing to implement strong workforce development programs to increase access to high quality jobs, and programs should include training or internship opportunities for youth, college students, and adults. And we find in certain ports like Savannah, they'll have programs for youth, but not for underemployed or underemployed adults, or they'll they won't have transition plans for youth to actually get into sustainable jobs that have that are linked to lucrative career or positions. And so in this particular,
I've seen like more or so posts for internships, but not so much like a steady ongoing partnership with any kind of university that's local or college that's local. So I think that that's the piece that we're really looking for when it comes to that workforce development piece.
I think that's important too, because it shows that they're serious about it, right? If you're investing, folks go, and even politicians from your congressmen, senators, they go recruit on college campuses people to go work in DC. They don't necessarily recruit at the schools we go to or the schools that are in our community, but they do go and recruit. And so utilizing our high schools, utilizing our local nonprofits as recruitment hubs instead of just relying on maybe one-stop offices is not necessarily the best practice. Your best partner is not government working with government or private only working with government. If you don't have the community engaged in something that impacts them the most, or that's supposed to be for them, is really not for them. It's usually about checking a box or fulfilling some sort of funding metrics. But we talked about the workforce development need to be stronger, and they got a 0 there. And having a point of contact for the community was also important. And you'll see they got a 1 there, and they do have an amazing person there who I would say has been transparent and available whenever we've reached out to her. And then even myself as a Newark native, and I would say that there are some folks at the port who do have the community-centered energy, and they do their best to utilize their position to ensure that the community is heard and that they can take actions even that will be favorable to the community. With that being said, I will stop there on just kind of giving insight on the report card as we near the ending time, and then yield the floor back to you, Erica, for any other questions that may be from the audience.
Thank you for that. Let's see if we have any questions. I know that we saw how will the community be informed about the report card. That is one of the questions. And so we will be continuing to engage on the steps and ongoing so that you can all see what's going on. We would love your input as well moving forward, for sure. And so, Terrance, I have a question because I know that sometimes, like, I know that there's a method to putting these types of reports together or to get some of these answers. But is there like any kind of flexibility when it comes to like maybe changing some of the questions that are asked, like whether or not we would be able to grade around like schools that are like or get the air quality and challenge that to the port around port side communities or schools?
Absolutely, and then I'll mention a fact that supports why that should happen. But that's what we would like. We hope that the report card would motivate the community to say, "What about this? And what about that? And let's include that." And so, yeah, and that's why we want it to be a next time, and a next time and a next time, because we want the port to know, as well as those who impact the port, and we want the community to know that we are not just here for because it's a buzzword or here for the moment, that we're going to be consistent in this advocacy effort to educate and engage the community and more organizations like yourself in zero emission efforts, because there's a long way to 2050. And again, we don't have to babysit, but it is our job as the public to keep watch, to be the watchdog for those who are utilizing um, public dollars to again do projects in our community, but also whether you was using private dollars, if you're using private dollars to hurt our community, we have a right to push back on that as well.
Mm-hmm. That is for
So
sure.
yes. Oh, and then to the point of the schools, I just wanted to say, and I think I said it in the last one, statistically, so and we're still trying to figure out why. But for whatever reasons, which there is research being conducted on this, the air quality is worse around high schools than elementary schools. I mean, if you just think about Newark, they're not really far in proximity, but why is that? And so, yeah, there needs to be a focus on schools. There also needs to be a focus on senior buildings and rec sites. And there needs to be clear air zones where you are not allowed to have trucks drive, let alone park around our parks. Even the bad air quality is destructive to our trees. When you think about the trees in Weekway Park, one tree can provide enough oxygen for, I think it is, a family of 6. And so that's how valuable and important our trees are, right? And so allowing them to be destroyed, whether it's a truck crashing into it because they're riding on these roads, or whether it's just the relentless poor air pollution and water pollution, quite frankly, that is again so prevalent in our particular community.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if there is any other questions. I think this is more of a statement. Is the port concerns on the on our voting ballot? Is the port concerns on the vote ballot?
No, I guess they're asking. Well, I mean, we typically I have not seen anything that's related to the ports go on the ballot. The only time that happens is if your port community is elected. Also, I know I probably should have said this earlier, but don't forget to like and share. There's a lot of information that comes out in these type of settings. But liking and sharing on your social media not only amplifies the algorithm, right, of it all, but it pushes it live into your feed. Sometimes we don't understand that too, that just because we may have something somewhere, if we don't engage with it, other people won't see it. But I was also saying that to say that these things live on, and PP has done a really good job at being consistent at putting out this type of content. So I encourage you all to like and share, leave a comment, and then also encourage folks after this live to go back and check it out.
Thank you. And so thank you, Terrance, for your time today. And I know that we're going to be reporting out as we get a little bit more in depth and get some of that feedback from the Port Authority in New York, New Jersey, our connect over there. And she has been awesome. And so I'm excited to definitely get some feedback from her as well. And thank you for all that you shared and the work that we've been doing together.
No problem. Looking forward to the next time, and definitely looking forward to being there in June and having the opportunity to engage in person.
Yes. And so our next engagement will be on trucks, right? I'm hearing about this. You got it going on over there. When you stop.
Can't stop.
Can't stop. Hmm.
I wasn't going to take this down, but we just can't stop.
Nope, we got to keep going. And
Gotta
so,
keep-
so our next engagement will be on the work that Terrance is doing on trucks and how we're gonna get them to zero emissions as well.
Yeah, and we'll see if we can get maybe someone from the trucking industry on to provide some additional insight. And if you know any truckers, I encourage you to have them tune into this. Truckers are often disengaged. They also are often put into kind of tight situations due to just discrimination and other things that happen in trucking, the same way we deal with these things in other workspaces. However, I think there's a lot of misinformation, right, around the electrification of trucks. Just like, the idea that automation is perpetuated, that it means it has to replace people. And that's not true. California has legislation that says no, that automation does not does not mean that you eliminate people out of these positions. And the law goes as far to say, no, you're not allowed to do that. That's me dumbing down what it says to make it clear. But all that to say that I think it's important for truckers to understand how they impact our communities, but also what resources are out here to help them to do truck conversion versus living in a space that is impossible or simply just too expensive.
Right, and also how detrimental to their health it is to make the changes.
Yes, yes,
Mhm.
that's right.
All right, Terrance. Thank you, and look forward to that as well. Thank you so much.
Take care, everybody.